Before we actually begin and before I introduce our guest speaker, I have a poll which I would like everybody to respond to. Should not take very long at all. Question with 3 parts. Please highlight the answer and vote. This is CNN Live, watching people's votes count. Okay, so the results of the tally so far, of the 12 people who voted, 6 people said membership in their community synagogues is declining, 4 say it's stable, and 2 say that membership is growing. I did that as an introduction to help our speaker. One thing I'm also going to do for our speaker is to tell him which are the communities that are represented on our call, because my guess is he might be interested in that as well. We have Avi West from Washington, D.C., Danny Margolis from Boston, Ed Frim from Pittsburgh, Edith Jacquez from Columbus, Judah Isaacs from Detroit, Liat Zeidenberg from Seattle, Meyer Den from Dallas, Sonia Dubinsky from St. Louis, Steve Baruch from Milwaukee. So we have a nice cross-section of people from around the country.
And I'm sorry, did you say, is anyone from the West Coast?
Not yet, Chaim.
Not yet, okay. Great, thank you.
We're hoping. Okay, so it is really my honor to introduce our guest speaker for today. Rabbi Dr. Chaim Herring is currently the CEO of the Herring Consulting Network. It's a consulting firm which specializes in preparing today's leaders for tomorrow's organizations. Prior to forming the Herring Consulting Network, Chaim was the executive director of STAR, Synagogues, Transformation and Renewal, for 8 years, a very well-known national foundation which probably the most famous one being Cineplex. He also was in charge of a program called Star Peer, which was about executive development leadership programs for rabbis. Chaim, in an earlier life, served as a congregational rabbi for 10 years and was also a senior staff member of the Minneapolis Jewish Federation. Chaim has been for many years known as a national thought and action leader. He's pioneered many innovative programs locally and nationally. He has been cited in 2007, 2008, and 2009 in Newsweek magazine as one of the 50 influential rabbis in America. He has written numerous articles about the American Jewish community, effective nonprofit organizations, board development, strategic planning. He is currently working on a book which he's putting together in a very interesting way by asking people for their responses to questions on a website which he has called Tools for Shuls. Those of you who are having difficulty seeing the whole picture, in the bottom left-hand corner of your screens, if you hit Fit to Screen, and if you would then hit in the upper right-hand corner Full Screen, you'd be able to see that website, toolsforshuls.com. Chaim graduated from the dual program at JTS in Columbia. He got his rabbinic ordination from JTS. He received his doctorate in organization and management from Capella University's School of Business in 2000. He serves on many national and local boards. One which I would particularly like to highlight is one called the Alliance for Continuing Rabbinic Education, in which Chaim has been a national leader in the creation of that group. We are delighted that Chaim is here to speak to us today in webinar 3 of our 6-part series of central agencies looking at the case study of the WOW project, implementing systemic congregational school change, the issues, challenges, and rewards. And today we've asked Chaim specifically to deal with the question of how he sees the futures of synagogue life going forward. So without further ado, I want to introduce Chaim Herring.
Thank you, and it's really an honor to be presenting because John Moocher was on my dissertation committee some years ago, and way back. I bet close to 20 years now, when I was doing some work at the Federation in Minneapolis, and want to acknowledge really the tremendous amount of work that I've been able to do through Jesna, and how much I've benefited from learning from the good folk. So I think the poll that you took a few moments ago is really indicative of the state of synagogues. It's a good snapshot. Before I begin to talk about what I'm hearing right now in congregations with regard to their future, and more specifically concerns about education, I'd like to just provide a lay of the land, at least from what I'm hearing and the experience that I've had. And Steve, if you don't mind, I actually prefer being able to look at everybody's face instead of just mine.
Okay. I can probably do that, Chaim.
I appreciate that. You all are much, much better looking. So, great. So let me start with what I consider to be a rather frightening scenario. I'm not an alarmist, I'm not a pessimist, but I have some really deep concerns about synagogues, and these concerns have only accelerated since the Madoff debacle, disgrace, and the economic crisis. But the trends were there already, and let me state some of them as I see it. Number one, we have a generation, I would say particularly Gen X, Gen Y, and what people are now calling Gen G, the Google generation as they age, that are accustomed to content for free. The notion of membership, of course, is really not very meaningful to them, and it doesn't mean that they don't care about giving to the community. They do, but there's also a deep expectation of free. And you can think about that with regard to the membership model, the current membership model of most congregations. And why don't we talk about that for a moment? The membership model of congregations, I would say it is a go-sace. It is on its last legs. That doesn't mean that it's going to have a quick death, but right now there are very few alternatives. There are some around to the current dues-paying model of membership. And some of the problems of that you're aware of. What we hear very frequently, on the one hand, there are people who have migrated to southern and western communities, and they feel like we've already paid our fair share. We contributed to the building fund. We don't have children in the Hebrew school. And as a result, there are minyanim that are springing up around the country that are basically for one generation. Those who are boomers and late boomers and up, and they pay to bring a rabbi in on a Shabbat, on a Chagim, and that's all they want. Then, on the other hand, we find that people are just not seeing both a values and a value proposition in synagogues. And therefore, especially in these economic times, we're hearing that synagogue memberships are declining because people can't afford to pay. And even though I'm not aware of any synagogue that has ever I'm not aware of almost any synagogue that has ever turned anyone away for financial reasons. People still are, they feel stigmatized when they have to ask for need, and they're just dropping out. Then, of course, in every discussion about synagogues, Chabad always comes up. And I know that that has a bearing on religious schools as well, camps, preschools. But there is a tremendous amount of what I would call Chabad envy.